creature 5 millimeters across, with no brain and a simple nerve net, has mastered something no other animal on Earth has: the ability to age backwards, potentially living for centuries without ever growing old. So how does it work? How does an organism reverse its own aging process at the cellular level? And what does that reveal about biological time itself? These are the central questions. Because if something this small and simple can solve aging, then aging isn't what we thought it was. There's a loophole. Understanding that loophole could reframe everything we think about growing older, about whether the aging process is truly inevitable or just a system evolution keeps using because it hasn't found a way around. Until now. By the end of this video, you'll understand the cellular mechanism that makes this possible. You'll know how this creature managed to invade oceans worldwide through human commerce and accident. You'll understand why it hasn't unlocked human immortality despite decades of promises in popular science headlines. And you'll discover the fatal flaw hidden inside that immortality. Why a creature unkillable by age could be suddenly vulnerable to extinction through a single pathogen. Now, let me introduce you to the organism itself. Turritopsis dohrnii is a small hydrozoan jellyfish, roughly the size of a pinhead, 4 to 5 millimeters across its bell. When German naturalist August Isig first formally described it in 1883, it was just another unremarkable species in Mediterranean waters. For more than a century, nobody paid special attention to it. It swam alongside thousands of other jellyfish species, biologically ordinary, completely anonymous, unknown to science beyond a single Latin name in a researcher's catalog. The breakthrough came a century later. In 1990, German researcher Christian Sommer was studying specimens in the laboratory when he noticed something impossible. The jellyfish were not just surviving, they were reverting to younger forms, cycling backward through their own life stages. He wasn't looking for immortality. He just saw it happen. The jellyfish were aging backwards. The creature's anatomy is radically simple. A gelatinous bell-shaped body, tentacles rimmed with stinging cells, a gastrovascular cavity for digestion. There is no brain, no complex organ system, just a basic nerve net that responds to stimuli. This makes what it does even more biologically puzzling. No brain, no consciousness, no centralized control, just scattered neurons. And yet somehow this creature has solved a problem that evolution never solved in any complex animal. In normal jellyfish, the life cycle follows a strict path. The adult produces sperm and eggs, larvae settle and attach, polyps form. These are small, tube-shaped juvenile animals that serve as the starting point for a new generation. Budding creates new adults from those polyps. The cycle is directional, always forward through time, never backward. This is the rule across virtually every animal on Earth. But Turritopsis dohrnii can shatter that rule under stress. Injury, starvation, dramatic environmental change, any of these can trigger what shouldn't happen. The adult jellyfish doesn't simply die and leave a generation behind. Instead, it transforms. It reverts backward into a polyp, which then buds new adults. The entire life cycle reverses. Time runs backward for this creature. This reversal is made possible by a process called transdifferentiation. What this means is that individual cells actively change their cell type. They shed their specialized identity and become something entirely different. A muscle cell becomes a digestive cell. Reproductive tissue becomes support tissue. The cells don't die and get replaced.
They rewire themselves. They unspecialize. This isn't like scar healing in humans, and it's not like stem cell differentiation. It's cells deliberately reversing the specialization they've already undergone, becoming less complex after having become more complex. This should be biologically impossible, according to everything we understand about cellular aging and memory. The fact that it happens at all rewrites what we thought was possible. But reversal takes days or weeks, depending on conditions. During this period, the jellyfish's tissues reorganize completely. Genital organs shrink and disappear, Complex structures collapse. The bell flattens and simplifies. The entire organism effectively becomes juvenile again, not growing younger in size, but unbecoming. It's a complete reversal, an erasure. For decades, this was simply a laboratory curiosity. Immortal jellyfish existed in Mediterranean waters, and most marine biologists didn't even know the mechanism worked. Then global commerce changed everything.
Starting in the 1970s and 1980s, cargo ships began taking on massive quantities of seawater as ballast. A ship would fill enormous tanks with seawater to stay stable during ocean voyages. When it reached port thousands of miles away, that seawater, teeming with plankton, larvae, and whatever marine life happened to be in it, was dumped overboard. Turritopsis dohrnii was one of the hitchhikers. By the 1990s, immortal jellyfish showed up in the Atlantic. By the 2000s, they appeared in the Pacific. Today, they've been documented in the Caribbean, off Japan, in the North Sea, and throughout warm water coastal regions worldwide, wherever cargo ship traffic is heavy. A Mediterranean jellyfish is now a global invader. But here's what makes this planetary spread truly strange. The global population isn't millions of separate organisms with different genes. It's clones.
All known immortal jellyfish alive today are genetically identical descendants of a single individual, replicated through asexual budding and rare sexual reproduction that produces identical offspring. One jellyfish, one genome, infinite copies. This clonal reproduction is both their greatest strength and their catastrophic vulnerability. Spread is explosive because there's no genetic diversity to slow replication. No competing lineages, no evolutionary pressure pushing different clones toward different environments. One genotype, completely unleashed, occupying every warm ocean in the world. In 2020, researchers documented a massive bloom in the Mediterranean. Turritopsis swarms so dense they clogged fishing nets and disrupted local marine ecosystems. A single genetic clone expanding into ecological space and occupying it entirely. One jellyfish cloned millions of times. For the last 30 years, journalists and pop science writers have promised that immortal jellyfish hold the key to human longevity, that understanding transdifferentiation would unlock immortality for us. Yet we're no closer. The promise simply hasn't materialized. The reason is deceptively simple. Immortality in this jellyfish works because it's a reset button, not a maintenance system. It doesn't prevent aging. It erases the aged organism entirely and replaces it with a young one, which then ages normally until stress triggers another reset. It doesn't stop time. It cycles through it. Humans can't use this strategy. Our brains, nervous systems, and accumulated memories don't survive a reset to juvenile form. An immortal jellyfish has no complex consciousness to lose. We do. The mechanism that keeps it alive forever would obliterate who we are. There's also a cellular barrier. Jellyfish cells bypass the Hayflick limit, the maximum number of times a cell can divide before chromosomal damage accumulates, and they reset their telomeres, the protective caps on DNA that shorten with each division. How this works at the genetic level remains largely unknown. The genetic switches aren't fully mapped, and the mechanisms don't translate directly to mammalian cells, which have far more complex regulatory systems. Other organisms complicate the picture. Hydra, a tiny freshwater animal, also shows potential immortality through similar regenerative mechanisms. Planarian flatworms can regenerate indefinitely. Yet none of this has produced human therapies. Research into immortal jellyfish has yielded useful basic biology insights about cell differentiation and gene expression, but translating from a simple creature with no brain or complex organs to a human being is exponentially harder than media coverage suggests. Perhaps most surprisingly, the immortal jellyfish is not actually invulnerable despite its reversed aging. Fish that specialize in eating jellyfish can kill it. Sea turtles eat it. Nudibranchs, sea slugs adapted to feed on jellyfish, readily consume it. Predation works just fine. It's vulnerable to disease and parasites. A single parasite species adapted to its specific genetics could wipe out the entire global population.
All immortal jellyfish alive today are genetically identical clones. One pathogen, one point of failure. Everything collapses. Environmental conditions constrain it as well. It requires specific water temperatures, roughly 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, particular salinity levels, adequate dissolved oxygen. It can't adapt to polar seas or heavy pollution. It can't thrive everywhere. Starvation still kills it. Injury still kills it. Rapid environmental change still kills it. Biologically immortal doesn't mean invulnerable. It doesn't mean unkillable. It means this organism doesn't age. But death comes anyway. Current research focuses on mapping the genetic toolkit driving transdifferentiation. Which genes activate, which turn off, which proteins reorganize the cells. Labs in Europe and Asia have established immortal jellyfish cultures for study.
Some researchers argue that understanding these mechanisms could eventually improve regenerative medicine, perhaps treatments for spinal cord injuries or severe burns. But that's decades away and far removed from the aging solved narrative of popular press coverage. The realistic timeline is much longer than most people realize. The biggest mystery is why transdifferentiation evolved in this species at all, why it only appears in certain hydrozoan lineages, and whether it's an ancient trait or a recent genetic accident that only now has been observed. The answer might reframe everything we think we know about aging and cellular possibility. So the central question resolves into a hard irony. This creature mastered immortality not by escaping death, but by embracing infinite reset. That works perfectly for a 5-millimeter jellyfish with no identity, no consciousness, no personal continuity across rebirths. Worse, its very immortality is a genetic trap. The clonal uniformity that allowed it to spread globally makes it catastrophically vulnerable to extinction through a single disease. The mechanism that makes it unkillable by age makes it killable by specialization. So right now, in oceans worldwide, countless identical copies of the same creature are living the same life over and over,